You're on StratNews Global. I'm Nitin Gokhale, and with me today are two eminent guests, China specialist, familiar face on StratNews Global, Jayadeva Ranade, former intelligence officer, and of course, a very avid China watcher. And shortly joining us will be Lieutenant General Devraj Anbu, a former Vice Chief of the Army Staff, and also a former Northern Army Commander, who will join us in a moment's time. But before I come back to them for discussion, I would want to update our viewers about the current state of negotiations between the Chinese and the Indian side, which happened on 15 July at Chushul, the fourth round of Corps Commanders talk. There has been a slow and very steady progress in this engagement process. The process that is being led by the Corps commanders on both sides. The disengagement that was agreed upon in the third round on 30th of June is now complete at 3 points: PP 14, PP 15, and PP 17A is what the latest information is from the talks that happened on 15 July. That verification of those steps that were taken by both sides has also been completed at these 3 points. But on the 15 July, and remember the talks went on for 15 hours. You can say that they went on for 7 hours because it was a matter of interpretation on both sides, and it takes time to interpret the languages. So even if the 7-hour long talks were mainly focused on how the disengagement should proceed at Pangangso, which has been a matter of contention on both sides, and the agreed discussions there were, or agreed proposals on both sides, have some differences. As all of you know, India wants Chinese soldiers to go back to their permanent locations at beyond Finger 8. China had some conditions, so that process is still on. But China has, in the meantime, removed soldiers and tents from Finger 4 and moved back to Finger 5. Some tents and some posts for 2 or 3 soldiers are still visible on the Finger 4 ridge lines, is what we are being told. But further steps are, of course, necessary to complete the disengagement there, and further discussions are there. So some proposals have been made by the Chinese, which have been discussed at the China Study Group in India on Wednesday, yesterday, and directions have been issued to send the reply to the Chinese, which should go to the Chinese perhaps in a couple of days, and then the process will be picked up again for discussion for complete disengagement. In the meantime, today the Indian Army and the Ministry of External Affairs issued more or less identical statements saying that complete disengagement process is intricate, the Army said. Army also said constant verification is needed. You will remember, viewers of this channel, that I had said about 10 days ago that at every step, once the first step is taken, at least 72 hours will be given for verification of these steps taken on both sides. So Army is saying the complete disengagement process is intricate, constant verification is needed. MEA has said, and this is for the first time, the Ministry of External Affairs has said, both sides agree to redeploy towards their regular post on the respective sides of the LAC. That's the eventual step one is looking at, where after disengagement there will be de-escalation and there will be de-induction of troops. But that is some time away. The MEA also said that mutually agreed reciprocal actions are being taken, which is confirming what the Army has said as far as the disengagement process that I spoke about is concerned. The MEA finally made a point, and the statement was quite elaborate, made a point that the disengagement process is specifically aimed at addressing face-off situations and close-up deployments of troops along the LAC. So the first steps that have been taken, as I said, at PP 14, PP 15, and PP 17A are basically to avoid any clash between the troops were very close to each other. That first step has been achieved at these points. At Pangangso, as I mentioned, from Finger 4, the Chinese troops have been removed, tents have been removed, they've moved back to Finger 5. That's the update one has. But this is not ending very soon. There will be another, perhaps a round of talks between the group called the WMCC, the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination, which comprises officials of the MEA and the army. And then, of course, it will go back to the corps commanders. Once the proposal that the Chinese had said has been replied to by India, and then the Chinese reply to that proposal. That's the update from the meeting on 15 July. It's a steady progress. Nothing is sort of, one has not lost hope, but it's still not out of the woods. The situation is still complicated and intricate, as has been mentioned by Army, and complex, as mentioned by the MEA. But let me come back to my two eminent guests here, Mr. Jayadeva Ranade and General Anbu. And we are discussing here two or three major questions. The first of it is whether India and China now need a new modus vivendi on managing the boundary as it exists, the line of actual control. And are the existing protocols and the confidence building measures which have been put in place after a lot of discussion over the last 20 or 25 years, are they inadequate now? Let's examine these two questions first. And let me come to you, Jayadeva Ranade. What is your thought on these two questions? Whether we need a new, completely new method to solve the boundary issue or take it forward?
The first thing is that the protocols that we already had in place, the agreements that we had already signed, and there are a number of them, the confidence building measures that we had put in place, they all require both sides to observe them and adhere to them. And we have found, particularly this time, earlier too, but particularly this time, each one of them has been thrown to the winds by the Chinese. They haven't bothered about it. They have just done what they wanted to do. That is the first observation I would make. So the first thing is we have to proceed from the position that there is absent trust in this relationship. And I think it is imperative that our forces, when they're dealing with the Chinese, will have to keep that in mind. The second thing is about a new modus vivendi. Yes, we can discuss it. We can try and see what we can do with it. Hopefully, and I'm not saying that it will happen, but I did notice the remark made by you based on the statements that the Chinese will go back to their side of the LAC, which implicitly suggests that there is some agreement on where the LAC is at the moment. So, plus, if we look at it from that point of view, but again, I think we must have some work whether the Chinese will stick to it or not, in view of the repeated statements that they are making asserting their sovereignty of these areas. So I think yes, maybe some additional documents or things would be required, confidence building measures would be required. But having said that, let me also say that I don't think we need to put too much weight on them unless we see the Chinese really complying.
Right. General Anbu, you've been a Northern Army commander, and in fact, there have been, I'm sure, face-offs even during your time. You were also corps commander in Tejpur, looking after West Kameng district in Arunachal Pradesh. What is your view on some of the discussions that are now happening that India needs new modus, India, China, both need new modus vivendi and maybe some new confidence-building measures?
Yeah, if you literally translate modus vivendi, it is conflicting parties to exist in peace. I think there are two people involved in the conflict. If we are going to change, then again we have to get at China to agree to those agreements. I think after 30 years from 62, that is 1993, I think it was very well drafted, the Border Peace and Tranquility Agreement. And subsequently also, it was taken forward based on whatever the experience that was on the borders. Whether 1990 basically talked about the CBMs in the military fields, gave some confidence. And in 2005, it basically looked at the political parameters and guidance principles for resolving the boundary issue itself. The articles had some very valid articles which really kept the peace on the border. You know? And then as late as 2013, after the Depsang incident, the border
Defense cooperation agreement.
cooperation,
Yeah.
agreement was specific to what all these increased face-offs happening on the border, because we increased our presence on the border and Depsang happened. So all these have been carefully thought out, and it is all interlinked. Now, the only problem is the other side is not willing to implement all of them when it suits. Otherwise, they themselves use these to benefit in keeping the border peace, to be able to use for their own economic development and other issues. So they have benefited. I don't say India has not benefited by this peace. We too have. But because now there is a difference in the comprehensive national power, and they feel that they can really push their way through and bully across, and now they're taking a very selective look at all these agreements, protocols, and the confidence building measure. So I'm not really sure that we really need a change. But what we need is, we need to find ways and means to make him stick to this and not violate at his will. So, as you mentioned in the beginning, the way things are happening, that he's keeping up his words and pulling back and things like that, it's all fine. Even finally, if he withdraws and goes back behind finger 8, it's fine. But one thing we must understand, that he has lost the trust of the military, because the military at the line of control over these years had established a great rapport with the people on the ground, and that trust he has lost. How this is going to be built up is one we need to look at. And secondly, how we make him enforce all this. I think that will come with only building our own power and our own military buildup and our infrastructure, all these things. This is, I feel, that will force him to not violate at will in the future.
So basically, build veterans and show to him that we also are now capable of standing firm and even deploying or mobilizing at will, or at least in response to his any adventure that he tries. But let me come to a third question that has been bothering us, and we have spoken on this program a number of times, whether the Chinese actions this time and in the future, and which is what I think everybody agrees, that this is not the end of it. Maybe 6 months down the line, maybe 1 year down the line, he will attempt similar action somewhere else, or maybe even again in the same place. Is it a ploy on part of China, Jayadeva Ranade, to keep India preoccupied, keep sucked in those places, and sort of keep India off balance in these areas, so that the Chinese can continue to do what they do elsewhere, and India sort of gets bogged down in managing the boundary itself? Do you get that sense at all?
No, certainly. But before I come on to that, let me just make one point here, which is that while I agree that the arrangements and agreements can be reworked, I do feel that we need to take note of certain incidents or events as they happen, and not just feel that the agreements will take care of the situation. And there are two things I'm pointing to here. One is the confidence that the Chinese were getting, increased confidence that they were getting as their comprehensive power increased. And that began changing dynamics on the ground, and we should have caught on to that. The second, that was reflected in the rising incidents of intrusions that kept happening. We may call them intrusions, we may call them transgressions. I think today now we should be quite honest enough to call them intrusions. They were doing probings or testing, whatever it is. The numbers had gone up quite a lot. And I
Right.
think when we see those numbers going up, we should not have that trust or confidence on the other side, because it indicates that they are up to something, or at least they have some other intentions once their capabilities come up. So I just wanted to make that point. The second, I said about their planning and what they're going to do. That is what your question was.
Yeah.
Yes, I do feel that the given the kind of mobilization that they have done this time, given the kind of uh, risks that they have taken, risks in terms of diplomacy, risks in terms of public diplomacy, risk in terms of loss of trust totally between the various sections of Indian society and them. I think these are major things that factors which they must have taken note of, or they must have factored in before doing what they did, coming in such strength at multiple points. So the question that I would ask is, why did they do it? What did they hope to achieve? And have they fulfilled their objective? Firstly, they did it, I would say, fully understanding or comprehending that the relationship will suffer for a long time to come, and that at least the public trust will have disappeared. Second, they must have factored in, rightly or wrongly, that our response, possibly they thought that they could still get away with doing business as usual on one side and keeping us under pressure on the other. And I think what I'm seeing, our response, firstly, on the economic front, has already started bothering them, if not hurting them. And they will probably now try and factor that in. But the final point is, what did they hope to achieve, and what have they got? And here, at the risk of repeating myself, I would say that I look at them trying to secure or safeguard their strategic and financial investment in the POK, Gilgit, Baltistan, Aksai Chin area. I think that is that Pakistanis will be happy with also. I came across an article the other day by one retired colonel, I think it was of the Pakistan Army, who has also made a similar suggestion about what the thing could be. But the point is that with the Chinese investments there, I think they wanted to secure that area, which means, in simple terms, cutting off our access to PBO and Siachen. So that could be one. I'm not saying it is. It could be. It makes sense if we consider that. Secondly, it could be, a feint here and do something somewhere else in Arunachal, but we are alert there, so I don't think it's going to happen very easily. But
Right.
still, but the fact is that they have stretched us all along the edges, and their resources and hope to, keep us in this situation for a while, making us expend money and energy. But what a little apprehension that I have here is the way that the talks are proceeding. They're being drawn out, they're getting protracted, and I wonder whether they're trying to push these into winter and then plan something else. So I would say that these are my worries, my concerns. I'll answer your question directly.
Doesn't matter. No, I think you've given enough indication. General Anbu, you're a military professional. You were a military professional and you're a military watcher now. And in your experience, what were the Chinese hoping to achieve? What were their objectives? And do you think they will continue with this kind of a thing? If not now, maybe 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line. What's your assessment?
I think it all started with Doklam. I think Doklam, the way the things ended, I think they felt that they have been done by India. And they really wanted to do something. And it was quite expected that the obvious place would be, that's where they can really do something. And going by the reports, one can make out that it was very well planned, rehearsed, and came with the intention to put down India by these small actions in 3-4 places. But unfortunately, the execution did not go well, and they totally underestimated our soldiers and the capability of the Indian Army to defend the borders. They may make an initial surprise and get on, but at the end of it, Indian Army is so well prepared and so well motivated and led. There is no question that they will be able to achieve what they thought they will be able to. I think they have gone wrong in that. And secondly, you can see the moment there is a casualty, they just not admit it. They're really scared now. And whatever they do, they want to achieve without firing a bullet and without buying a casualty. I think it cannot happen in a terrain like this, and you spread yourself so widely and in eyeball to eyeball contact. And with the battle-hardened troops of Indian Army, I think it's a little far-fetched for them to have thought like this. And they took this timing when all this COVID is happening and all other issues are happening in South China Sea and with Hong Kong and things like that. They thought they will be able to do this, and even if they had achieved little success, probably they could tell the world that they have been able to put down India and put it in place, so that in the in the eyes of the neighbor, we are made to look down, and also our interaction with the US. Yeah. So they tried to achieve too many things in this, and I think they messed it up badly. And I think they have learned a lesson that Indian Army is not such a easy to sing on a terrain like this.
That's right. In fact, that's the next question that I have. That having done all this and sort of gone or miscalculated their moves despite such massive mobilization for the first time after so many years, Jayadeva Ranade, what is your sense going forward? What are the challenges that we must look at? Should we be sort of strengthening our intelligence, ISR capabilities, not just intelligence, but surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities? Should we be also strengthening our infrastructure faster in the border areas, which anyway we are doing at some pace, but maybe sort of speed up the development? And was there a planning on their part that by sucking in Indian forces nearer the LAC, they will bleed us economically? Uh, to do that, what would you say? I mean, how to avoid those traps that may have been there underlying in that planning that the Chinese had?
Well, this is the first point. Sounds very simplistic. It is to say that we have to anticipate what is likely to happen. And
Right.
here, what you said about ISR capabilities are the key. In today's date, and given the terrain that we are going to be operating in, if it's especially in the high mountains, we do need uh, spies in the sky, particularly to be able to monitor them. I mean, it takes a minimum of, I would say, at least a month or 20 days for them to get organized and come to where they did. So we should have been able to pick it up much earlier from whatever we have. The second thing related to this is just having these inputs is one part, but you need people who are able to understand these inputs and draw a picture as to what is happening. So I'm not making any comments on that, but I think we need a specialized set of people who are doing that on all ends. You need them at the initial processing end. You need them at the consumption end, that is the armed forces or whoever. So, and there are a lot of various sources where they come from, but this needs to be done. The third, I would say, is that certainly we must build up our infrastructure as rapidly as we can, and for two purposes. One, for improving the logistics of the armed forces, but equally important, and I stress equally, is to build up the economic standards of the people living in the border areas. I think that is also very important. We should do that, and we need to build up the pace of infrastructure. The third is, of course, the army will, and when I say army, I mean all three services, We'll have itemized what they need on priority. They already have been given the money, and I think they will try and get those things in fast. One additional point I would say that while we are looking at Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, those are land borders, we need to keep in mind the next threat, which is maritime, and
Right.
must speed up our work in Andamans. I keep hearing that it is being done, it is being speeded up. My own sense as a citizen is that it's not being speeded up fast enough. I mean, processes have to be streamlined, money has to flow, contracts have to be given, and the work has to be done. And there are many things to be done in the Andamans. We'll have to build underground hardened shelters for the aircraft. You'll have to have missile deployments there. You'll have to have warships there. So these are the things that have to be done, including on the west coast, off the west coast. So we have two sets of islands which we can develop and
Sure.
use to choke the Chinese if ever the need arises. So we got to look at a wide range of things, and I think this is a wake-up call. I'm sure our people will start, trying to get these things in order. But some of the critical things that I mentioned, like for example, the capable analysts in the various sectors who know it. These are easier said than done. I mean, it's difficult for them to train it, difficult for them to keep them in a certain place. Particularly the army has that problem because they have to get posted out somewhere. They got to look for their promotion. So things will have to be changed. And that is where the thinking out of the box, I think, will need to come.
Right. General Anbu, the army has, of course, improved its posture all along the LAC over the past 20, 25 years, particularly over the last 10 years. I was looking at some of the videos in Ladakh where the road building or the tunnel building is happening. And when you look at the terrain, and I think our producers can bring in those videos, if you can see here. Once you look at the terrain and the kind of difficult task that they have, it is not very easy when once you look at the topography and the kind of difficult terrain that is there. But still, as a former vice chief, as a former Northern Army commander, how would you look at future deployments in the sense that does the army need to strengthen its own deployment, permanent deployment in these border areas, or there are other means to meet any future challenges posed by the Chinese?
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. I think I totally agree with all the issues Mr. Ranade has mentioned. I totally endorse that. And please give me 3, 4
Sure, please, please. I think we have lost your
terrain
voice.
hazards and
Yeah.
traverse. Firstly, I want to reinforce the satellite surveillance. What is required for us is a 24-hour surveillance satellite. You should have the repeat in 24 hours. And once the area of interest is identified, then we need to have a 24/7 surveillance. So you have different type of satellites for both, and for the 24/7, it's a low Earth orbit satellites we need to launch. All these are in the planning, and in some phases it is there. I think we need to hasten them up and bring them forward. I'm not saying the planning is not there. Planning is there. We need to bring it forward so that it can be put to use now when it is required. And satellite, as you rightly mentioned, that there is the Kunlun mountain which has to be crossed if the G219 has to be approached, whether from Kaskar or from the Shikane side. So it gives you ample time. So if a surveillance is kept on those areas and their major cantonments of Kasgar, Lanza,
Bhutan.
Chengdu, Dali, and Yunnan, and all those places, I think we will get an ample time for, and also the training areas. We know very well which are the training areas, and they are now constantly changing, and they're coming closer and coming on the one side of the G219 as well. So we need to really look at those and keep it under surveillance so that we are not taken by surprise. That's one.
Yeah.
The infrastructure per se, I have just 3-4 things to really mention in this. If we take Ladakh, we need to build the all-weather capability. The tunnel in Zozila axis, it's in 2 phases. The phase 1 is progressing well. Phase 2 needs to be progressed, and so that we get an all-weather connectivity there. Now the Rohtang tunnel is through. Now going beyond on the same axis to Leh, there are 3 such passes you have to cross, and it is the it becomes Baralachla, Tanglungla, and Lachungla. So these 3 passes are too high, and 3 tunnels is not possible for you to make. Having crossed Rohtang, then you must from Darcha take a pass in Sinkunla and then get to Nimu, or you can go to Kargil via Lama Yuru and all those places. You get a
Through
wider
Zanskar.
connectivity.
Is this through Zanskar? Is this through Zanskar?
Yes,
That
yes, it is through Zanskar. So
right.
therefore, then you bypass all other the same, and then you have a very good connectivity with one just tunnel more coming, Rohtang being through, one more tunnel, and we are there. And the
Yes.
greatest advantage thereafter is I again propose one more tunnel. This thought process is not common, but I say in the area of Lama Yuru and that thereabout, the tunnel through the Ladakh ranges going right across towards Partapur and Toys. If you have a tunnel access here, all that people are talking about convergence of Pakistan and China through the Turtuk area and from the subsector north in DBO, it will get absolutely, they can't even think about it once you have
It will
this
be
connectivity.
neutralized. Yes, it will be neutralized.
It will get utilized. And it is not a difficult thing. There is a track already existing. It's a mountain which is feasible to do a tunneling. I think we need to do that as far as. Then third is we need to build the infrastructure in the forward areas. And apart from connectivity, defense-related infrastructure, which is your defense works, like your storage for your strategic ammunition, your missile, your RT ammunition, and your MEC forces ammunition, and FOL. All these you need to really. Lot of them are going on. We need to do it, and we need to disperse it. And the next point we need to do is, in this area, to survive the first attack, we need to disperse ourselves and camouflage. I think this is one aspect we need to do from now onwards. Now, otherwise, we'll be, when the balloon goes up, then you're going to be caught in the open. That is one thing I think to look at. And some equipments. See, we have air defense weapons, your ATGMs for the ATGMs, electronic warfare, all are based for the planes. We need to have custom made for the mountains. It's going to be small, valley based, and looking at the threat based approaches. So therefore, air defense system, electronic warfare, your SDR communication, and ATGM based on very mobile special vehicles. This is the
Right.
need of the hour. It can easily take on any threat of mechanized threat in subsector north or in north sector,
Demchok area. Yeah.
the Tawang Ball and Bumla. So it can
Right.
easily take on all those. Then we need to develop some disruptive capabilities, because after all we are in defense, and if he's going to bring with such a phenomenal weapons and things like that, we need to have drone swarms. We need to invest on it. We do it when we are SOS. You do it when absolutely you are threatened from an unexpected thing. You do it. Electromagnetic pulse, cyber, laser against the UAVs, and even for our own surveillance, we need to look at some small UAVs and drones for surveillance at the battalion level around. It is being done. All these are being done. Quite a few are in the pipeline, but it needs to be hastened up, and the urgency needs to be felt at all levels. And There's another point I just wanted to make. It's the functioning of the CSG. I've seen there's one weak link in this. MEA is actually spearheading. They are capable. They know everything. They're doing it. But to match up to them, when they deal with the army or the ITBP, then ours is routed through the MOD or through the MHG. And these two links are very weak. So either we strengthen or we short form something where they interact and then keep somebody else informed and the decisions are taken. Last couple of years, I can tell you that they have been functioning very, meeting very often and taking very quick decision. But we have neglected for a long time, and the effect we are seeing now. I think it needs to be a little more proactive. Go on the ground. You must go go to the place frequently. Meet with a field commander there. Then you get an idea, and we are able to really give directions. Otherwise, we'll 76 directions of those PP, limit of PPs and things like that will continue to haunt us. I think we need to really look at this particular aspect. And ITBP, and nobody's saying that we place it under command for the army, but functionally, I feel when such things happen, operationally, they must be under the army. There are a lot of different views on this, but it's a very considered. There's no parochialism, no the same. But functionally, if it is placed operationally under the army, I think we will reap much more dividends. We may save a lot of resources that we are looking for. And you said any employment. I feel that there's one more division we need to push into the Ladakh, because Pegongso North and Pegongso South has to be dealt by two different, from KK Pass to Demchok. It's a very long span of control for one division to really take care. I think we need to build the infrastructure for them to be placed there and look at it very closely. I can tell you, even these agreements don't work and we have to shelve it and they go back. So we will be able to take care. Rest of the place, we are very well off. We're the central sector, Sikkim, Tawang, and in the east, we are very well off. Even if these agreements had to go for a toss with one more division permanently placed, and with these sort of equipment and other things getting in, we are very well off to take. And you covered the infrastructure in the rear background, and I saw that in the Tawang sector you covered. Similarly, everywhere the backbone communication has come up very well. I must say in the last 8 to 10 years, the improvements have been phenomenal. So we are not really wanting. Just give a year or two, even those Sela tunnel would come up and those bypasses would come up in Tawang, and we will be very well off. But for what I just mentioned, if we
Point
can
well
do
taken. Point well taken, Anbu. I think structural reform. You have one more point to make.
Yeah, just one more point. Mr. Ranade mentioned about the data and all being kept. I think the historical knowledge of the activities happening on the post and at the various levels must be held there and made known. This is the point Mr. Claude Api also wrote an article recently. I saw that also. He has highlighted this. I think it is very, very important for the people on the front line to understand the historical backing to why things are happening in the way that it's happening. Then you're in a better position to take decisions and act immediately.
Right. I think very many important points, structural reforms at the highest level in the China study group, maybe even get disruptive technology, have one more division. I think a range of issues you have covered, General Anbu. I want to take Jayadeva Ranade's opinion on two important things that General Anbu mentioned. One is, of course, the historical knowledge that he spoke about, which a continuum has to be there, because otherwise we tend to go from formation to formation where people come and go, and then they have no clue of what's happened in the past. That's one. And secondly, in terms of looking at the anticipating the Chinese threat, would perhaps mean that more people to watch China in coming years. Would you agree? Because the way you have studied China for all your life, I think we need more people who are devoting full time to China.
Well, I couldn't agree more with General Anbu when he said that the historical knowledge should be available on the spot to the people there. It also needs to be available at the headquarters, whether it's the army headquarters or the intelligence headquarters, because they are the ones who are going to process the information. So you need one, and there are ways that it can be worked out. I think once it is decided that we need to have this kind of thing, then these various organizations can develop a structure where they would have to do it, and even if it means tweaking the existing structure. In fact, not tweaking, they'll have to do more than that. But that is possible. Second, as far as having a competent analyst for looking at this, we would need a dedicated group only for China. Similarly, you would need a dedicated group for Pakistan. These are our two main problem areas. And I think it is possible again to have them. But I'll point to two, I'll give two cautionary notes. One, it should not become a routine function in the sense that the information comes, they process it, they send it, like the way it often happens. I mean, Jalan will know what I mean. The second point is that he made a reference to the CSG. Now, I happen to have participated in many of those meetings when I was there, and the army was always present. In fact, we used to have it in the army ops room in those days. I suppose it's still the case.
It still, I
But,
think, happens there.
but
Yeah.
he made a very valid point that if their proposals, I mean, it's okay, you meet there and you have your discussions, but if the proposals or the reports go through MOD or MHA, I think that is infructuous. I will make two points here. One, I don't think they can really contribute to whatever decision or view is being expressed. I mean, I've seen that over the years. The second is that the army must have a direct input. It's a different matter. It may be accepted or not accepted, but they must have a direct input, because then they'll become players on the table and be able to push their point of view. So I think these need to be done. And if I can just add one point, he also referred to the ITBP. My understanding was that in times of when operations start or when hot situation develops, the ITBP automatically comes comes under the jurisdiction of the army. But obviously, I'm not correct on that. So these are points that.
Yeah, no. So I think you made both. I think General Anbu wanted to respond on that point, perhaps.
No, I am saying not only when operations, because they are now deployed in an operational area. So even
Right.
in the normal circumstances, for operational part of it, if it comes under the army, the functioning will be much better, integration will be much better. There are pros and cons. People say that. But overall, if you wait, I think placing them under operational command in the normal circumstances, because it's an operational area that we are functioning.
Something like what was done with the Assam Rifles, I think, in the Northeast, that
Yes.
operationally under the army and administratively under the
Yes.
MHA, that kind
Yes.
of thing. But I think you both of you made very valid points, and I think looking ahead, one can only say this, that the Chinese challenge is not going anywhere. In fact, it's only going to increase, and we need to not only be on our guard, but also improve and strengthen our capabilities in all sectors across the spectrum, actually, as both of you have mentioned. And I think that's the point that needs to be driven home, not just to the government, but also to our common citizens who seem to relish in the ball by ball commentary that is being provided by TV channels and some of the commentators. Because this is not something that is going to end tomorrow and then not come back to bother us again. And on that note, I just want to thank both of you for very erudite and very scholarly and very experienced inputs and comments that you've made. We had several comments that have been made on our program, live comments that have come, but most of them have been answered by both of you. So I'm not going to take any questions and end the program here. But to our viewers, do keep coming back. We will bring you updates. We will bring you such in depth analysis from experts as you have heard today. And all that remains for me to say is thank you, General Anbu and Jayadeva Ranade, for this very, very, very valuable and insightful inputs that you have given.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.